Hello, and thank you very much for being with me again. We finished during the last broadcast by me saying why I thought Open Sesame was quite wrong. And the reason why it is quite wrong is this word, I believe, is a Western interpretation of what should have been abracadabra. Abracadabra literally translates to I speak, therefore I create. So the magician saying, I speak, therefore I create, is much more logical to me than just open sesame. What does this actually mean? The magician is like Hermes, if you wish. Hence, he will only appear when you are ready to question what is your given world. He also only appears when there is a message from the gods. Hermes very much represents the archetype of the creative rebellion, the one who says you don't have to do as you're told. However, he's also the messenger, but he's quite often seen as a threshold figure. For example, he appears in the original Cinderella, which is quite interesting because in the vapid Disney version, there is no Hermes, there is no tree of eternal life. So there's a lot of questions to be asked about the so-called vapid effort that Disney put together. So our friend Aladdin is in the cave, so to speak. What does this really represent? What does it represent to us? Well, essentially it means inner separation. Inner separation can mean many, many things. But you have to understand that the ancients did not see inner separation in the same way that we see it. One of the best ways to understand inner separation, ironically, are the early Christian desert priests, where they used verses to put themselves into a higher state of mind. This was called theosis, and this system really works. You can find it within the use of Islam with the dhikr. So how it works is quite simply the person who wishes to enter a higher state concentrates solely on their heart chakra or the heart realm, and they then repeat words over and over again until you transcend into a higher level of being. Now, realistically, when we look at Aladdin and the cave, this certainly seems to be the case, where the cave is purely allegorical. The outside is purely allegorical. Essentially what he's doing is he's putting himself into a different state, and in that state he finds what is crudely called the lamp. But it's very interesting that this whole experience is essentially a type of meditation. One must understand that people back in the day were not divorced from higher spirituality. It was, if you read the works of the early Christian fathers, they are very esoteric and very, very advanced. The point is that the church did all they could to stop people looking within, because obviously if you have people who are looking within, they are not going to look without, and therefore they are not going to go to the church, the mosque, or the temple. So, this is the other thing with Aladdin. Him, by choosing the lamp, is claiming the inner fire. We've already mentioned how he ignores most of the other treasures, and he just goes for exactly what he wants, if you like, the Zen mind. What can we learn from Aladdin in this situation? Well, we can learn one thing categorically, that Aladdin is in fact the magician, and this is what he realizes, because the false magician or the false ego remains outside of the cave. However, he takes the real self, the real identity within the cave. It's very interesting that when one takes something like 5-MeO-DMT, you can literally feel all the egos pulling away from you, and you're just left with the core belief, the core of who you are. Many ancient religious people have spoken about this, especially in the Sufi tradition, where they talk about the entire ego dissolving and only leaving what is essentially yourself behind. Gurdjieff speaks about this. Siri Nisargad Maharaj, in his book I Am That, speaks about this. And ironically, Aladdin speaks about this, as well as ancient Christian martyrs who also speak about this type of state. Like I said, this type of state is not unusual within the ancient world. What is unusual is the fact that it was taken away from us. So we have to understand that why was it taken away from us? And quite honestly, it was taken away from us because it stops us liberating. It stops us meeting who we really, really are. We know that Aladdin goes into the cave and he comes out again by rubbing a ring. However, what does that tell us? It tells us that all the forces and powers are from within ourselves. Realistically, this stage of the book is just re-emphasizing that the traveler, the esoteric traveler, is in fact the magician. We create everything from the lamp's light. This is the real transformation, if you wish. It's creation without a model, without the do's and don'ts. It's a creation of becoming your own living lamp, if you wish, your own creative force. Many people talk about this. For example, if you read Think and Grow Rich, he talks about finding that inner flame. Also, if we look at, say, Charles Hannell, Charles Hannell wrote probably the best book, Finding Yourself and Becoming Successful, called the Master Key System. All these things point to you being the magician, you sorting out your own life. So this is the thing to understand about the Aladdin mythos, that it's not about wishing for wealth and power. It's an instruction manual for the alchemy of the self, which means that you must strip away all the illusions and false models. And this is done by entering the wilderness, removing yourself from the material, and also confronting what is false. And there are many things within us that are false, because in the Rolling Stones, they said, I can't be a man because I don't wear the same shirt as him. Although this is irony, it's actually quite correct. For example, young children of today, if they're not wearing the labels, they're presumed to be inferior. So we've had this from birth. We have to pull away from the labels. We have to pull away from what is false, the false treasures, if you wish. And then we have to connect to the metaphorical lamp, which is our own hidden fire. It's not until you do this that you will ever find out who you are, because, as I said earlier, we are so malleable. We can be connected to anything and want to be part of it. So it takes a great deal of bravery and it takes a great deal of soul searching to truly find out who you are. But once you've found out who you are a much stable and a much happier person inside. Thank you very much for listening, and namaste.